name is Ramisha. I'm 23 years old, and I have a story.
So, where did you grow up?
I grew up in the Inland Empire, Southern California, Paris, Moreno Valley area.
Go on, and who raised you?
My mom or my great aunt on paper raised me since I was 2 years old.
Where are your parents now?
I don't know.
When was the last time you talked to either one of your parents?
I never have met my father and my biological mom. I don't remember. Maybe I was like 14. I think I seen her in passing, like at a grocery store somewhere. Just like, hello.
How did you know it was her?
I'd seen her before. When I was younger, I went to her house for, I think it was Thanksgiving, and I like met all my siblings for the first time. And then it was cool. It was good. I got to interact with them and talk to them. I was super little, maybe like 4 or 5. And one of my brothers put me on his bike, and we crashed the bike, and I hit a tree. I skidded my face on the tree, and then I remember that was it. I never went to see them again. I never interacted with them until like years later, and those weren't really interactions. It's just like, hey, I know you, you know me. Cool.
So you weren't close when you were young?
No.
And how did you lose touch?
So my biological mom, like, I guess from day one, I don't know, day 1, day 2, she was addicted to drugs, is addicted to drugs. I wish I knew. She decided to use drugs while she was pregnant with me. So when she gave birth to me, that kind of was it. It was like, you're in this hospital now, and this hospital is your home from now on.
So she left you at the hospital?
Yeah.
So who took care of you?
For the first 2 years, I had really, really bad lungs and really, really bad respiratory issues. I was very small, only 1 pound at birth, and so I was stuck in the hospital for the first 2 years. And then there was a short time in foster care, and then my great aunt, who was actually my biological mom's in-law, decided to take me in.
How long were you in the hospital?
Since birth, it was like a 2-year period from birth to 2 years old. And then from then on, throughout my whole life, I've been in hospitals for pneumonia, respiratory infections, asthma attacks, fevers, bronchial stuff, all that stuff. And there was one point when I was a kid, I would go to the hospital every month and stay for at least 5 days. Very, 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 very hard. Very, very challenging.
So what age were you when you moved in with your great aunt?
2 or 2.5, almost 3 years old, I believe.
Do you remember any of that?
I remember she had this big house. There's like 4 rooms. I had a room, my brother had a room, my sister had a room, and then my mom had like this master room. I don't remember like coming there because there was a visitation process where I had to come every weekend just to see if I was comfortable there. But I do remember I got there and I felt comfortable, but I would like whisper. I wouldn't really speak. I would whisper. I don't remember this, but I would sleep in the closets Like, my sister would freak out. She'd look for me, and I'd be asleep in the closet. I don't know why I did that. So I guess there was some sort of trauma from sleeping in the closet. I was super quiet, super shy, super afraid. And I don't really remember what I was afraid of, but I just remember feeling afraid. I was small, but feeling super small and being afraid.
Do you remember asking questions as a child about your parents?
I remember the first time I did. I remember my great aunt, or my mom. She's a mom. I'm referring to her as my mom in this whole video.
You call her mom.
Yeah. She has this like scar because she obviously had a C-section from the kids that she had. And I think I asked a question about it. I was like, what is that? And she was like, oh, it's my scar from my C-section. And then I think I asked, like, maybe I was like 5 or 6. And I think I asked, like, oh, for me? Like, when you had me? And then that's when she told me, like, oh, I didn't have you. And I remember I started crying. I don't really know why. Well, I do know why. It felt weird. I think it felt like, whoa. Like, I thought you were my mom this whole time and you're not. Like, who are you? And I remember I was crying. And it was, yeah. And then after that, I really didn't ask any more questions until I got a little bit older. But that was the first time I just was crying. I was like, what? I think it was shock. It was like, oh snap, like, you're not my parent. What happened? What? And I think too was the age where like kids start to talk about their parents and, oh, my mom does this and my dad does this, my mom does this and my dad does this. And so it was hard because it's like, oh, I just have a mom. And then it's like, oh, your mom's not even your mom. And it's like, okay, now I have to adjust to this.
Did she give you any explanation in that moment?
No. It was more of just like consoling time. And then later on there was explanations, but in that exact moment there wasn't really. It's just a consoling time.
So you didn't ask her where your mom was?
I knew that she was a part of the family at that time because when I'd been to her house and we went, she was introduced as my aunt. Oh, I forgot about that whole. Wow. Okay, plot twist. So, when I went to visit when I was 5 years old, or 3 or 4 or 5, and I skid my face on the tree, she was introduced as my aunt. And so when I went, it was like, I'm gonna go hang out with my aunt and my cousins.
Your mother was introduced as your aunt?
Yeah. And so then fast forward to when I was like, oh, like, you're not my mom? It was like, no, she is. And then it was like, well, wow, it's really all coming back. It was like, why? I think that was why I was crying, because I was like, well, why am I not with her? Like, I went to her house and I seen her other kids. Like, I'm her kid too. Like, why can't I be where they are? So I think that is why it was hard, because it's like, you have a house with all of your children living in it. What's so different from me? Like, why am I different from those children? Especially because she had kids that were younger than me. And so it was like, okay, it wasn't like I can't take care of her, somebody else do it. It was like, I'm taking care of all my kids that I already have, plus my new kids that I do have. So it was really, really hard to figure out, like, why am I not in the mix? Like, why am I not included?
Do you feel like you've gotten answers to that?
No. I feel like I've come up with my own answers in my head to make myself feel good about it. I think I did the math of like how old she was and how old I think she was around like 23 when she gave birth to me. And so I'm 23 right now. And so I'm trying to imagine myself having my own demons or being addicted to drugs, having my own issues, and being like, okay, maybe I shouldn't take care of a kid, maybe I shouldn't have a kid. But then I also think like, okay, but we live in the same city. We grew up in the same place. Like our families are intertwined, like my brother and sister are your cousins. So there's like, we know each other. And I would see that side of the family sometimes. Like I would see her sisters. My mom was married to her uncle, and so like we would see that side of the family. And so that was always weird too, because they know me too, but it's like out of sight, out of mind. Where it's like, okay, we're not gonna think about you. If we see you in the store, in the grocery store, it's like, oh my gosh, you're so big, you're so beautiful, I love you a lot, but it's like, I'm not gonna call you on your birthday, I'm not gonna see how you're doing. And so that was really weird, because my brother and sister were close to that side, and they hung out with them and they grew up with them. And it was like, I feel more closer to you. I'm like, by blood, like I can give you a kidney, but I don't know you. Like I don't know who you are, I don't know any of you. So that was really strange. But yeah, I tried to make answers in my head, like, yeah, maybe she just wasn't fit, just wasn't right, things like that.
How did your great aunt get you from the hospital?
I was told that there was a phone call that no one in my biological family wanted to take me. No one wanted to, I guess, take the responsibility. And so they called my mom, and they're like, hey, nobody wants her. Do you want to take her? She was like, yeah. So that's how.
And you were already 2?
Yeah, so I was in a foster home care place for a little bit. I don't remember. And then it was obviously the visitation, so I would go to her house every weekend. And they would see, I think I went to her house every weekend for a couple months, and they would see how I would do before they permanently placed me in the house.
Were you in the hospital for those 2 years consistently, or in and out?
I think so. There was a record, so I believe for those 2 years I was in the hospital.
Do you wish you were close to your mom now?
Yeah.
Has she ever reached out?
No, I think the closest it's been is a Facebook request. So I think, or Facebook friends. I think that's closest.
How do you think that your story has affected you as an adult?
It made me question myself a lot. At first I was embarrassed. Sometimes I still can be. It's a very hard story to tell and a very hard story to share. It made me just kind of question who I was, kind of like, do I belong to someone? I think now, just because when you start to get older, you start thinking about your life and your future, and like, will I be married? Will I have a family? Will I have the family that I needed when I was younger? Are my children gonna have 2 parents? Am I gonna be a good mom? Am I gonna be able to answer my kids' questions? I mean, my great aunt was great. She is great. But it's really hard. You just don't know your parents. You just don't know where you came from. You don't know your family history, or you don't have baby pictures, or people have like photo albums of when they were born, like the day they were born, the little bracelet things, a footprint. You have those things, and sometimes I'm like, man, I wish I had a dad that taught me how to drive, or I wish I had just someone to guide me, someone to teach me. Or I wish, like, my mom knew I smiled like her, or we can talk about how I look like her, I laugh like her.
And how do you cope with that?
I think God. I think having a relationship with God really helps, because like everything that you question, God gives you the answer to, and everything that you want or need in life, God is that for you? And so when I was 19, I got to study the Bible, like really study the Bible, like really in depth, get taught the Bible and get taught like who God is. And that really helped me a lot because I seen like, okay, if I don't have a dad, like God is my dad. If I feel like I don't specifically belong to people, I specifically belong to God, and it helps me to have that confidence and not be ashamed of my story and not be embarrassed of my story, but to help me cope with it in a way that I can share with other people my story.
If you could change things about your past, would you?
I want to say yes, but no, I wouldn't change it. Because God would have written it differently if he wanted to. And as badly and as much as I pray to God and sometimes I'm angry with my life and why was this my life and why was this cards for me, God has shown me why. Maybe I never would have studied the Bible if none of that happened. Maybe I never would have questioned God. Maybe I never would have prayed to God if I had the life that I wanted. So no, I wouldn't change it.
And what would you say to somebody who's gone through similar things?
I understand you. I feel your pain. Embrace your story. It's powerful. No one is like you. That's your superpower. No one is like you. We all have our stories for a reason. Believe that God wrote your story for a reason and God wants to use you. God wants a relationship with you, first of all, but God wants to use you to tell your story, to share your story.
Wait, Lynn.